this video, we'll create a face rig with Kangaroo Builder. We'll do pretty much all parts of the face, and we'll even add some squash and stretch controls. For this example, we'll do joint splines for the most part, but it doesn't have to be like that. You could build an entire face rig with just blend shapes. If you want to see an example of a blend shape rig, just localize the Thomas rig in the templates. Keep in mind that this video is more like just something to get you started. To get really efficient in building base rigs or any other rigs with Kangaroo Builder, you will need to get confident with the documentation at kangaroobuilder.com. And whenever something is not clear or you feel stuck, feel free to go to the forum and ask questions there. Now we're going to start with the simple ones, which is the tongue, the teeth, and the nose. And we'll do them in the puppet tool, basically like all the other body controls. They are also in the base human template. And if you remember in the first video, we removed them because we were just doing the body. So now let's get them back. So I'm gonna search for the teeth. Got them here, the nose and the tongue. Okay, so I'm gonna select them and I'm gonna do Control C. So I can copy. And then I'm gonna go back to my character and Control V. So save, and I'm gonna do the blueprints. So I'm gonna start by importing the blueprint skeleton, creating the missing blueprint joints. And so I'm gonna start laying them out. I'm gonna start with the tongue. I find it a lot easier to just place the roots of the blueprint skeleton first. Okay, and when I have the roots placed, I'm gonna build the blueprint rig. So on the blueprint rig, I have a lot more controls to add them nicer, and you should always create the blueprint rig after. Like never export from the blueprint skeleton. So now that I've placed them, I'm gonna export. And then I'm gonna rebuild the rig. And after that, I have to skin the joints, place the controls, and export everything. Now this is easy. We've done this in the body rig already. So that's why we're gonna jump forward in this video. So in here, this is basically finished. And so you can see the nose control, and then the teeth controls, and the tongue control, which is an FK spine. Now the eyelids are pretty quick to set up if you're using eyelid splines. We start by adding the Face Pro module. So we go to Face Pro, and then we usually take the latest one. Currently it's version 19. Okay. And there's a lot of things we can turn off. So we'll need the base mouse controls later, but let's just turn them off for now. Same as the blend and sliders. We'll leave the parallel attach transforms on. The function that we need is fake lid controls and spline lid setup. And for the spline lid setup, we have to add a few blueprints here. So first we'll select the loop around the whole eye. And then we click create left curve and locators. So this creates a curve around, and the locators, they are the corners. So very often they are already good, but sometimes the system doesn't catch the proper one, and then you have to fix the position. And that's it at this point. So we'll do export Splines blueprint. Okay, so now I exported it into the Maya import folder, which gets imported the next time in here. So let's run everything up until the formers. Okay, let's see how it looks. Okay, so it is working. Now I want the blink line to be a bit lower. So let's put it at like 0.15, and we'll have to enter that values also into the default attributes, default blink line. So it's also 0.15 when we rebuild it. Now let's skin it. And skinning is pretty easy actually. So just have the mesh selected and click find to joint on selected mesh. Okay, and that's working too. Yeah. You can also see that he's also creating a nice curved line. This is coming from all the extra joint rows. If you have a character that has more resolution or less resolution, then you might have to adjust the bind rows. But on this one, it's the exact right ones. Now let's make sure that the controls are also working. So the spline controls, okay, they could be a bit more localized. And we can do that with the control smooth iterations. So let's try a lower value and let's rebuild it again. I'm gonna hold first. Okay, and that's looking better. And the blink is also still working. Okay, now let's run the whole thing and see if everything is building. We get an error. Okay, that's a common thing. So this is about he's complaining that the default mesh is not set, and we just have to give him a default mesh. Basically, the parallel attach function is attaching these blue arrow controllers, the blink controllers onto the mesh. And yeah, so now it's happy. Okay, it's still good. Now the next thing we need to do is doing the eyelashes. So for the eyelashes, we look for the function called lashes setup underscore spline. And for this one, we also have to start by giving him blueprints, which is the curves for the base and for the tip of the eyelashes. So the base for the top. So I'm gonna click create top base curve. Okay, so I've got this curve. And then for the tip is the top end curve. Now this TO means track order. So this means that I have to select all the vertices at the top in the right order because it's tracking the selection order. This is a little bit different than the base because in some examples we have different kind of meshes where it cannot be a continuous line. So the top or the tip is always tracked order. And I'm going to click create top and curve. Okay. And now I'm going to do the same for the bottom ones. Okay, so that's looking good. And then I have to export them with the export lashes blueprints. So now I've exported it. There's one more thing we have to do, which is to set the attach mesh. So we want to say that it should be attached to the body geo. And then I'm gonna build everything up until the lashes setup function. Okay, so it looks like it's working. We created these extra bones and these little controls. Now we need to skin it. And for skinning them, I'm gonna select the button, select eyelash joints. And then I'm gonna find them to the meshes with the flood tool. Okay. And then I'm just gonna do add to closest and the arrow bound. So let's see how they behave. It might have been too smooth. Let's distribute the weights with a smaller smooth value. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay, let's see how the blink looks now. And it doesn't look very nice. But we can clean that up. So every control has this blink pose locator. We can adjust that. This is basically how the control will be when it's blinking. So now it immediately looks better. And I can do the same thing on the other ones. Okay. If you want to fine tune it even more and you cannot get there with the pose locator, you can also add a blend shape on top. Now, since we changed pose locator, we have to update the posed attribute. But there's a button for this. It says create pose looks. Okay. Now, all these pose locators, the values of those pose locators are saved in this attribute. And that's it about the eyelashes. I'm just gonna hold and rebuild the whole thing. Yep, the eyelashes are still working. For the brows, we are gonna use the brow spline surface function. So I'm just gonna turn that on. And then I have to give him some blueprints. So I have to create a curve that goes along the brows with the button create left brow curve. So I'm also gonna create the brow orientation locators. And with those, I'm just gonna make it so it follows the shape of the head. So you see the forward, the name forward here. So that should basically poke out of the head. And then the out should basically go along the tangents of the head. So here the out is basically this. The position doesn't matter, those it's only taking the orientation. Okay. Now the next thing is the import default surfaces. Okay, so these two surfaces that I have to shape towards the head. Now there's two of them. So at the top, they should be pretty much identical, but at the bottom, you have the one that is called eye socket. That is need to go a little bit, need to go inside the socket. So this is basically for later. The bottom part need to slide along the socket and the top part not. So I'm just gonna sculpt those. I can also use shrink wrap for that to get a starting point. Okay. And then I'm just gonna start a little bit more on this. Okay, so I just jumped forward in the video. And so now you can see that the bottom one is like the socket one is like going inside the socket and the outer one not. Now the next thing is I'm gonna export this. So I'm gonna do export brow main blueprints. Now let's build everything up until low to formers. Okay, and he built some line. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we can skin it. And for skinning, we just use the flood tool. Well, it's not pretty yet, but it's working. Let's transfer the skinning to the brow geometry. And let's assign a ROM. Yeah, it makes it easier. Okay, so, well, it's not pretty, so we'll have to clean it up a little bit. And the first thing, we'll just smooth the top a bit. Okay, now for the bottom part, so it's not pretty also because it's not sliding along the shape. So it's kind of like linearly just moving up. But ideally, this should just push out a bit as this is moving up. And at the same time, we can also make the top part a little bit more sliding along the skull. And we do that with the vertical spline offsets. So we'll give him a list of minus zero point 0.5 and positive zero point 0.5. So the minus means below and the positive means above. Oh, they're very far away. So zero point 0.5 is too big. Now let's change that. Let's put it to minus zero point 0.5, minus zero point 0.1 and positive zero point 0.1. Okay, that's looking much better. Now the bottom one we can adjust a little bit. Let's put it minus 0.07. Okay, that is perfect. So now let's also load the deformers and apply the ROM again. Okay, so now we need to bind it. And we have some facial skinning tools for that, which is the move brow line main to offset rows. So I'm just gonna select the outer part and the bottom part. I'm gonna click move brow spline main row to offset. Okay, so you can see it's moving out a bit, um, but the skinning can still be a bit improved. Okay, so that's better now. So it's moving them out and still stable when it goes down. Now, one thing I don't like is that when it goes down, it kind of stays that shape, but it would be nice if it just becomes a bit straight. And so for that, we have a lot of locators. You can move those spline controls automatically as the main controls move around. So you always have to look at the name. So that on the name down, yeah. So that feels a lot more natural. You could do poses for the up to or for the in and the out. We don't normally do that, but what we do sometimes is when the spline controls move, we can make the tangent control behave a little bit different. Yeah, so it might be a bit too much, but so that's something you can do. Okay. So now let's mirror everything and also make sure that these both locators are safe. So I'm gonna use the skinning tools near the topo, and for this I'm gonna use the normal mirror tools. And so the brow locator are being saved with the default others. So I need to mirror them first. So the locators are also mirrored to the other side. Yeah. And now I can fill all values. So they are saved in here now. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do is for the middle part, I want this to follow. And there's two joints. There's the middle default and the middle control. So basically animators, they have a control that they can also move the middle part a little bit. So I'm just gonna start by adding the control joint to the skin cluster. Yeah, so now the middle part is moving up. Now we can still work more on the skimming. There's a few more things we can do actually in this section. If the brows are going in, we can try to get a nicer crease. And one way to do that is to add the default to the skin cluster and find like these vertices, the more sharp follow. Okay, so now I jump forward in the video. So if you look at here, I'm getting a nice crease, and you can even take this and move around, which is what animators sometimes ask for. It's a bit tricky to get to this point, so I'm just gonna show roughly the weights. Now it's the default. Yeah. So the default has basically the one that should not push out, and then you have the middle control, which is the middle one. Yeah. And again, that takes a bit of practice to get to this point, but you don't actually have to do that with the joint. You can also do, if you need the crease, then you can also do that with blendShapes. So if you look at in the documentation under browse, so first you have blendShape, but that's not it. So the first part of the blendShape is just if you don't have any splines, what you need is the browse splines correctives. So if you want to get the crease, then you could just create a corrective that is called browse spline in a. Now let's add some blendShape controls. For creating blendShape controls, we first have to create a blendShape file, and that blendShape file will then get imported in the import blendShape file. So to create that file, we start by getting the model, and we can delete the custom for that. We can even delete all those extra islands if we know that the vertex ID start from 0 on the face. So now we open the shape editor, and the first time we create a blank shape, we can say cartoon in this case, because we are doing a lot of splines, so that's why we do cartoon. And so we have a few here by default. Let's do a chin razor, and also let's do a cheek out. Now the chin razor will just click the edit button, and then we just move around the vertices. And we can also use the sculpting tools for that. Okay, so now let's mirror it by setting the mirror table first. Okay, we can leave it like this. Now the cheek out, I should take these vertices here, a bit of a soft selection, and pull it out. Okay, that's fine. And I'm also gonna mirror that. Okay, so I've got a cheek out and I've got a chin razor. Okay, so now I'm gonna save that. And the way I'm gonna save is in the import blendShape file. I'm gonna say save file, and then it just saved it in the correct file. In the this is the file name. So when I run this up until this function, then it's gonna import that. So it's gonna import this file, and it's also going to bake those blend shapes, but it's not going to apply them yet. So for applying them, it's a function that is further down, further below, which is the blend shapes and sliders. So this function will take what what this function is importing and will split them, create controls and all this stuff. So that's why I'm gonna build everything up until this function. Okay, so here we can see the new control. Yeah. And there's also one for the right side and the same for the chin razor. Okay, so now we have these little joints here, the slider blueprints. So with this one, we can tell him where the control should be. So by default, it was just estimating it based on how the blend shape works and the distance and the location of the blend shape. And so he was creating one with best test, and now we can just improve it. Now the mental is the chin razor should be kind of in the middle. That seems to be good. Then rotate it a bit. Okay. And we don't have to do the right side because now when we export it, so on the function itself, we can do export slider blueprints. Then it's gonna export only the left one. Yeah. So by the way, if you remember when we did the eyelid controls, you can change the slider blueprints of those two. Just important that you place the blueprint before running the parallel attach transform function. So the parallel attach transform function will disconnect the slider blueprints from the controller and attach the controls to the skin or the mesh or yeah, the joints that are influencing the skin. Let's just build the whole character. I'm just gonna hold first, and if I build the whole character at this place, then the blending controls should be all good. Okay, here they are, and they're also following the head. Now, let's look at the blendShape file again. So you can see there's a lot more things you can do here. This is just a default, but you can add a lot more. Under add target, you have a lot of shapes you can add, and and all these shapes they will be connected automatically in the blendShapes and sliders function. You can even add like custom shapes, and you can tell that function how to apply it. To see more detail on which shapes you can add or how to add custom shapes is all in the documentation under face general, and then everything under blend shapes and sliders. So here you can see how what options you have to do, what options you have for adding custom target. You can create like attributes, or you can create your own target, or you can also make like correctives. You have a lot of options. Let's do the mouth rig next. So we can do the mouth rig with the base mouth controls function. So we turn that on, and we're gonna do spline. So we're gonna set the spline to true. And when you do splines, it's best to have the borders to false. So the borders are good if you have blend shape controls, but we're gonna do spline, so we don't want the border. Okay, now we have to do some blueprints here. So the first and most important one is the inner loop. Okay, so I have selected the loop and then create inner curves and locators. So this is basically just creating the curve and the two locators that are separating the bottom and the top. There is one very important attribute here that we have to set at this point. So you see that in this case, in the middle, so where the curve is in the middle, we see here that the top lip is actually a little bit below the bottom lip. So it's very minimal, but it is below the bottom lip, which is a very common. And so whenever it is below the bottom lip, we have to set an attribute called flip inner mouth blueprint curve. We set that to true if the top lip is a little bit below. This is very important. If you miss that, then it's gonna create the joints and the controls in the wrong place. Okay. So now we create one for the outer. Create outer curves and locators. Okay. The mouth pivot. It's a pretty easy one. So it's just when you rotate the mouse left and right, then this is the pivot from where it is rotating. It doesn't have to be super precise at a specific location. You can, if it's about the mouse left, right, you can do some more adjustments with those later too. But if you have it at a position where it's kind of like in the pivot, that'll help later. Now those things I just created, those are also important if you do blend shape controls, blend shape mouth. If you do a spline mouth, which is what we are doing, you also have to create the corner sliding planes. Okay. So this is basically where the corners are sliding, and also a little bit the lip controls. They are also sliding on this. Now this can be a bit tricky for the first character. So it's very important that the middle is going over the symmetry line. Yeah, so it needs to go over. It cannot be here somewhere. It needs to be actually extend to the other side a little bit. And so this is basically the shape of what the controls are moving. On this one, we don't want it. We don't want to match it precisely to where the face is. We want it to kind of match where the teeth are. And we don't have to check the teeth model or anything. We just imagine that when the lip go back, they don't go along, they don't go fully along the skin. They go more like inside, and that's kind of what we are replicating with this. So now we can export the blueprints, and let's build everything up until this function. Okay, I get an error. Yeah, the attachment. It's an easy one. Just given the skin. Okay, and I've got my controls here. Now let's see how the joint look like. So we have an inner row, which is called the small joint, and we have the outer row, which is called the big joint. So if we want to see how they look like, how they work, we can add the lip cubes. Okay, so you see they're both following, but if I rotate the controls, the red ones, the small joints, they are rotating to it. But the big one, the blue cubes here, they are only translating they're basically translating around the red ones, the small one, but they are not rotating. So this is a good thing because this means I can make the lips bound to the small joint because they should get the rotations of these controls, but the outer part should be bound to the outer ones, to the big ones, because they should not take they should only take the translation from these, but they should not be taking the rotation. So now before skinning them, let's apply some ROM. Okay. And then to skin them, also open the face skinning UI, and then you have the add to big joint and add to small joint. But these attributes here are very important. So you want to set the rigid loops and the fade loops. So let's do the big ones first. So they should be rigid for, I mean, the main one, but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I want to fade out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we just put in 5 and 6. And, and then having the mesh selected, I'm going to click add to big joints. Okay. So now it just added to the big joint, but it's not, so it's doing the translation, but if I rotate them, they, they, be, they react to that, but they only react in translating them. So this is because we need to bind the small ones now. So and the small ones, I'm gonna do the main road and 1, 2, 3, and then maybe 1, 2, 3 to fade out. So I'm gonna do 3 and 3. I'm having the mesh selected. I don't have to be in the default pose, and then I'm gonna do add to small joints. Okay, so now you can see that this basically is taking the rotation. And at the top, the upper part, it's just the big one is only taking the it as translation. So now the next thing is we'll just look at the round and see how it behaves. Yeah. So here you have some artifacts you just have to clean up. And if something is further away from the lip joint, then you can use the smooth. So smooth here. By the way, these ones are really just using the skinning tools. It's just shortcuts. And so this one is just smoothing with one iteration. Now this is also easy to fix. So I'm just gonna go to internal transfer and say transfer, just transferring from the closest point of the same mesh, and then it fixes it right away. Now there's a few things we still need to clean up. Now here you see some artifact, but the problem with this one is that it's very close to the lips. So you wanna try not to smooth too much at places that are too close to the lips, and because then you kind of lose the control of the lip controls. But what you can do to smooth here is you can do smooth lips along segments. So that means it's going to smooth along these lines, which is a little bit more stable, and the upper part also a little bit. Okay, so it's getting better, but it's still not pretty. There's still things we want to do. So there's also a lot of settings on the control. One thing that bothers me even more is that there's no middle control. So let's add a middle control. So on the left lip bottom peg, we should put in a comma 0.5. So 0.5 will add a middle control. You can add even more side control with this one, but we are happy with the side controls and we just want the middle controls. Now let's build all up until here. Okay, so now I have a middle control, which is great. But one thing I don't like looking at it now is that this one and this one, they are a little bit too far in the middle. I want to have them just a tiny bit outside. And that is happening with the same attribute. So instead of 0.33, I'm just going to put zero point 0.3. And then I'm going to rebuild just that function with the undo and run selected. Okay, now you can see it's a little bit further outside. Okay, now let's apply the ROM again. And let's continue where we stopped before, which is the settings. I want to make this smile a little bit nicer. I can do that with the parser values. If I have control selected and then I click the P button, then it's going to select the passes. And the passes, they have some extra attributes. And in this case, I want to reduce the follow corner surface vertical a bit. So when the corners go up, I don't want it to go up that much. And maybe reduce the aiming a little bit. Okay. So I think the smile is looking a little bit nicer now. Let's mirror this to the other side with the default other button. Okay. Yeah, so that smile looks much better already. So maybe we can also do a few things. Yeah, that shape is a bit off. And we also have pose locators. So all these controls, they have a lot of pose locators. And you see always which one is turned on. So right now, the corner in up is, is active. So I can adjust that a little bit. And in here, I just want to make that shape a little bit nicer. And the same on the bottom one. Yeah. Now if I mirror that, yeah, it's on the other side. I could still fix the skinning, but we can also add correctives on top later. So let's see what else we have. It seems pretty okay. Okay, so this is the lip roll. So basically when I'm rolling these controls, the box controls, then I want this to be cleaner. This is also happening with the pose locators. So I've got the tangent controls. I can also rotate them like this and then twisting, or I can just rotate the pose locator. In this case, for the top rolling. Yeah, and then the top rolling has a much nicer shape immediately. For the bottom one, it seems pretty good already. I can still adjust it a tiny bit. Maybe even adjust this one. They also have a roll pose locator. Okay, I think that's a little bit cleaner. Now let's mirror to the other side. Okay, so that's the roll in. What about the roll out? Yeah, the roll out is usually trickier. Usually I also want to move it forward a bit, and the same with the bottom one. The rollout is definitely trickier, but I've noticed that animators are usually not that picky because they usually don't rotate it as extreme as what we are doing right now. Okay, now this is the mouse pivot. If you remember at the beginning, we attracted that pivot, we created a pivot blueprint. So this is basically where it rotates, the pivot that it rotates around. But now we can adjust that a bit. So on the mouse control, if we select the path on that, then we have a few more interesting attributes. So what we want to look at here is the horizontal one. So we can say we want to rotate it more stronger. Probably good at 10 already, but we can also make it move, translate more. So basically as this control moves left and right, these are the values that tell how strong it will react. So that's pretty okay already. Okay, so the up down, yeah, we can definitely adjust that a bit. So that's the vertical one. So vertical rotate, you can make it rotate a bit stronger. Okay, yeah, we can smooth out. We can always fix the skinning a bit after, and then you can also adjust. You can make it translate a little bit as you rotate it. Okay, yeah, so that's behaving a bit better now. So now we see this control is moving out and in, but nothing is happening. So this is the funnel. And so the funnel we need to entirely set up with both locators. So we have here the funnel. Okay. The funnel is trickier, but if you think about how tricky it is to model, it's not that bad. Okay. We can fill out a shape on top after. So for the control, we'll just leave it the way it is now. And let's do, this is the lip press. So when this moves in, it's a lip press. And so for that, we just want to do the lip roll of those controls. Okay, so it's a lip press. And we could also add a shape here to clean it up a bit more. Oh, the jaw open now. Now we didn't skin the jaw yet. Now to do that, we just use the move tool. So we're gonna move from the head joint, from the head main to the jaw main. Okay. Okay, so if I move it directly from the head, that means I don't lose any of the skinning I just did now. So move. Okay, so it's found, and we can smooth it a bit. Now, this is a very extreme jaw open anyway. I don't think we want to open the jaw this wide for the tutorial. Now, for the jaw open, we can also add a corrective later. But this is very extreme. So we want to maybe open it this wide. So it's minus 20. So now if I click the create ROM animation button again, then I have a new jaw open. I don't quite like the shape here. I think we can clean that up a bit. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. And I see some artifacts here. So let's clean them up too. Yeah. Now let's mirror it to the other side. We can still create a shape on top later. Now there's one more thing on the, so here there is another attribute on the jaw controller that is called mouse close. So that is being activated, but it's not closing. So we have to make the controllers closing it. And if you see on this one, there is the mouse close hold locator. So we just have to make that up and that one down. Okay. So now I can open this and close it with the mouse closed. Now there's one more thing that keeps bothering me, which is that when the lips go back, then this area kind of stays. It doesn't move much. And I just wanted to react just a little bit. And this is easy to do. I'm just going to select these vertices and I'm going to click move head jaw to lips end. Okay, that was too much. I'm going to make it a bit smaller value. Now, I just want to mention that this is not the only way to do this. So you can also, if you're in the documentation, you can look at cheek setup and then you can see we can also create those cheek spline and the same for the NLF. So you can also have those splines here. It gets a bit more advanced, but it is possible. So export the skin cluster. And also, very important, we need to save the default attributes. So let's mirror them first. And I'm going to click fill all values. You can see it's going to add it into the default setting value. So I'm going to click fill all values. Yeah, so now it's filled it. And yeah, you can also adjust things directly here. But we are good now with this. So I'm going to click hold and I'm going to build the whole thing and make sure everything is good. Now, very often animators want some additional simple controls that are just following the setup and they can on top manipulate the mesh a little bit. And very often we are using the puppet tweaker controls for that. If you watched the first video about the body, we did exactly that on the front side of the shoe. Now we can also do that on the face. But there are some tweaker setups that are a little bit more specifically engineered for the face setups, which is everything that you find here. So all these functions that are starting with tweakers. Now, most of them are more useful if you're using a blendShape. So if you have a blendShape rig, then you can have the lid tweakers, like little tweaker controls on top, or for the lips or for the brows. If you're doing everything already with splines like we did, then the only one here that is interesting to us is the tweaker sockets. So we'll just create it by turning on the function, and then we have to create the curve. So I'm just going to select the outer loop and then create left curve and locators. So the locators look pretty good. Maybe this can be here. Okay. So now I'm going to export the blueprints and I'm going to run the whole thing. But first, I also have to specify the attach mesh. Okay, so it built them here. Yeah. And the next thing is we need to skin them. And for skinning them, we have to use the Add Influences button. Now this is creating an additional skin cluster here. And then I can use the flood tool and set the weight. Okay, so you can see here all the influences that he added. Now we just have to bind them. Now the tweakers are easier to skin if you close the eye and even put the blink line to 0.5. And then we select the vertices and flood them onto the tweaker joints. Okay, so that seems working. Now I'm just gonna mirror this topo and rebuild the character and we are done. Now let's do some squash and stretch controls on the top. And this is actually called the pen setup. So we'll start by creating blueprints. Now we've got these ones on the front, which we put a little bit above the nose and should go all the way down to the chin. And then the blue one should start somewhere here and should go all the way to the top. And the light blue one should usually stay where it is. It's basically just a location of the head joint. Now I'm just gonna export that and I'm gonna rebuild the whole character. Okay, so I've got the controls here. You can put them at a bit better locations. Okay, and you can see the joints when you turn on the skeleton disc. And so these ones here and here. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to skin them. And for skinning them, we start by clicking the buttons Connect Influences and Connect Influences Top. And now you can see he created like these two extra skin clusters. And now we need to use the flat tool to bind them. But this is kind of a lot of little manual things, and they're actually explained pretty well in this wash and stretch menu. So if you go to weights, yeah, it's gonna tell you like using the flat tool, what you bind first. So you bind first to the bent middle, and then you bind to this one to the front, and then later you transfer everything to the other meshes. And you might also have to smooth the eyes. So it's just easier to just follow this than the video. So I'm gonna skin it here, but I'm gonna do it like really quick without getting too much into detail because it's much easier to follow that in detail on the documentation. So first I'm gonna bind everything to the bent middle, and also I'm gonna apply the ROM. Okay, so on it to bent middle, and then I'm gonna bind everything from the nose and below to the butt face pen squash one. Okay, that seems to be working. Just need to be smoothed a bit. Okay, so and then I'm gonna do the top part, which is the pen top. I'm gonna bind everything except the zero one to all this. Okay, okay. So that seems to all work. And now the next thing is I'm gonna transfer it to the other meshes. I'm gonna use the transfer tool and from the pen, I'm gonna bind to all the meshes, and I'm gonna have to do auto create new skin cluster. Okay, so that created all these new skin cluster, which is great. And I'm gonna do the same for the top. Okay, so yeah, so now they're all following. Of course, the hair can be improved. So for the hair, I'm just gonna do At the end, I'm gonna put the bottom to the face middle. Yes. Okay. So that seems good. Okay. So that's it. And we're done. Um, we just rebuild. It's gonna export the weights automatically, and we're good. Okay. So let's see. Yeah. So now the controls are all following. This only happens after you rebuild with with the new weights. Then you have them follow. And the same is the other ones. You could work more on the skinning to have this part a little bit more stable. Mm, yeah, but it's all working. Now let's see how we can fix a few shapes using correctives. So in this example, let's fix when the lips go in and then up. Then you can see there's a little bit of a shading that comes up. Now we want to fix that. So the way I do that is I have to open the blendShape file and put that rig into the blendShape file. So in order to put that in there, let's hold the scene so we can then reference it into the blendShape file. Now let's open the blendShape file, and with the full scene button, I'm going to go to reference. And I've got the one that is from 11 seconds ago, which is the last one, and that's what I'm going to reference. Okay, I can just hide it. And let's open the shape editor. And now I have to connect it here in the transfer from reference with. Yeah, so it knows now it's the 1092 namespace. Now let's add the corrective target. So I'm gonna do right click here and then add target. And here I can look for it in the list. So it's the corner in up. It's here, corner in up. Now, how do I know the name of the blend shape? I can just look it up in the documentation. So under blend shapes and sliders, we can see here mouth, then you go to mouth target list, and you can see a lot of shapes mentioned here. So in here, it's the corner control. This one is the one that we are using. So now let's sculpt that correctly. At this point, the corner in up is just an empty target. Same situation as if you would sculpt it from scratch. In this case, we're just gonna select the mesh, having the target selected, and then I'm gonna click Pose Rig and Match. So now I put the shape from the rig into the target here. And now I can fix it. And I'm going to use the sculpting tools for that. Okay. And then I'm going to mirror it. And then I just save and I rebuild the whole rig. Let's see what we have. Okay, and it's smoother now. And we can look at the blend shape. Yeah, it's here.